Hey guys, so I am going to get ready and we're going to talk about a case again because I really enjoyed it the last time that we did it, so I thought that we could talk about another one today. And this one is a case about, it's actually a disappearance. So it's not essentially a murder, but you can decide about that yourself, like whether you think it's a missing persons case or a murder investigation, because the truth of the matter is that we don't know. So this is a case about a woman or a girl, college student named Maura Murray. And I'm sure you guys have heard this case before because I know I've talked about it before. I've watched a couple things about this case because this is truly one of the most interesting cases that I've ever looked into for so many reasons. But for one, there's so many different theories about what could have happened to her, but also like there's so much information, and like at the same time there's so little information because we don't know what happened to her. So first of all, I've seen a couple different things on this case. I've listened to podcasts and I've seen Oxygen's show called The Disappearance of Maura Murray. Both of those are extremely interesting. I've also read James Renner's blog. He's an author and he's researched this case a ton. So those three are like my main sources. And then of course I've read like Reddit threads and all of that, so I can kind of become educated on other theories and, you know, talk to other people about it. Although I don't really post on the Reddit threads, I just read them. Anyways, so this is a case about Maura Murray. Maura was a college student at the University of Massachusetts. She was going to school for nursing, and I'm just going to introduce a lot of the characters in this case first, and then I will kind of go into what happened in the case. And then there was Bill. Bill was her boyfriend. The dad explains their relationship as a pretty positive one. The dad said that he always liked Bill, blah, blah, blah. There are some reports that they were kind of going through a rocky part in their relationship during this time, but he was in another state during her disappearance, so he never was really considered a suspect because he had like an airtight alibi. And then there's Fred Murray. Fred Murray was Maura Murray's father, and people said that they had a good relationship, but then a lot of people also said that he was pretty tough on her. Maura was a really good athlete. She was a track star, and apparently the father, Fred, just was kind of hard on her for making sure that she always was the best of the best. And I guess Fred kind of gets a bad rep for this, but I know like my father wasn't really like that, but I played softball really competitively when I was younger and like traveled to different states, and it was a big part of my life. And although my dad wasn't really like that, I had girls on the team whose fathers were like that, and that's just how they were. That's how their relationship was. To me, it didn't make me like suspicious of them. They were just uber competitive fathers. So I guess that's how I would explain Fred to you guys. Now, Maura also had two sisters and a brother. The sisters were named Kathleen and Julie, and then she also had a brother named Kurt. Brothers and sisters were never considered suspects either because they were nowhere near the scene at this time. They also had alibis. With this case, it's kind of important, or with any case in general, it's kind of important to backtrack to a couple days or even months before somebody disappears or is murdered, so that way you can kind of get a better picture of their life. So I will kind of go through a timeline of some things that happened in Maura's life before she disappeared. So she used to go to West Point, and apparently when she was there, she wasn't happy. It was reported that she actually stole makeup from what sounds like kind of like a convenience store on campus, and that paired with some other things that happened, she ended up leaving West Point and then getting accepted at University of Massachusetts, where she was there as a nursing student. Now, while she was there in November, this was in 2003, November of 2003, Maura was caught stealing credit card information and using it to buy food. So it's not like she was buying plane tickets, going on expensive shopping sprees or anything like that. She was using it to buy like pizzas. And she ended up getting caught, and there's a really unflattering picture of, it's not a mugshot, but of the campus security when they caught her. They took a picture of her, and that's kind of floating around on the internet. And it's really dark and kind of scary. It doesn't give you the best vibes of Maura. Now, I do think that Maura was kind of maybe a little bit troubled. She had some, like, I don't know, some issues, as a lot of people do when they're growing up, but I didn't think that she was a bad kid. I think anytime there's somebody who disappears or is murdered, every little horrible thing in their life gets kind of dragged out and is made public. And so, although, yeah, she stole and she kind of made some bad decisions, she was a partier, that doesn't necessarily make her a bad person. It just kind of sounds to me like she made some bad choices as she was growing up. So it's kind of like a little background on her. Now, she worked a campus security job where she would just kind of keep an eye out on some of the students on campus. And during this time, this was, let me look at my date. This was February 5th. Now, I need to mention that Kathleen, her sister, had some sobriety issues. So she was in rehab, and apparently her sister had called her when she was working on campus. And when her sister had called her, it was obvious to her supervisors, the people that Maura was working with that day, that Maura was like visibly upset after this call. And at the time, nobody really knew like what was going on or anything like that. And when somebody asked her like, "What's the deal? Are you okay?" all she said was, "My sister." And so that kind of has always been like a kind of thing that has stuck out in people's mind. Like, well, what happened to her sister? Was it really her sister? Was there something else going on? And it came out later that once the sister finally spoke, that she had just left her rehab that day when she was calling Maura, and Kathleen's fiance on their way home from picking her up from the rehabilitation center had brought. Sunny's all fired up about this, had brought her to a liquor store. And so I guess she had called Maura to kind of inform her of this, and obviously just coming out of rehab, stopping at a liquor store shows that, you know, your husband or your fiance is not very supportive of your sobriety. So I guess that Maura was just very upset about this. At least that's what the sister likes to insinuate, is that when she said "my sister," when she was talking to her supervisor at work, it really was her sister on the phone that she had just gotten off the phone with, and it was because she had stopped by a liquor store after just getting out of rehab. So that is something that came out in the Oxygen series. Now, it's important to note that during this time, apparently Maura had left her job for a short amount of time, like that night. And while she was gone, there was an accident. Now, Maura had been in lots of car accidents. She wasn't the best driver. And this accident in particular, it was never proven that she caused this accident or anything like that, but there was a boy that was walking by the campus and he was struck by a car and ended up being in a coma for a really, really long time. Now, a lot of people like to speculate that, oh, it must have been Maura that hit this kid and that's why she was really upset that night. And it has come out later that I guess the boy woke up from his coma and it said, no, it wasn't Maura, and other people had come out and said, you know, it couldn't have been Maura that hit him. So people were thinking that that's why she was so visibly upset, and that would explain some things that happened in later days. But I don't really think that she hit the kid while she was driving. I don't know, but that's up for everyone else's speculation, I guess. And that call that was made to Maura by her sister Kathleen was on February 5th. Maura drove I guess you could call it a clunker. It was a car that worked, but it wasn't in the best shape. And so on February 7th, Maura's dad, Fred, drives to Amherst where Maura is going to school. And he says that he's going to go car shopping with her, which is, nice, all fine and dandy. However, it was known that Maura wasn't the best driver, so in my opinion, I don't know why you'd try to get a new car for somebody who obviously wasn't making the best decisions when it came to driving. Wasn't a careful driver for sure. But anyways, he goes to Amherst, and he says later that he went to Amherst because he was going to go car shopping, and apparently they went car shopping all day. Everything was fine. They didn't end up getting a car, but later that day, remember I said Maura was a partier. She wanted to go to a party at the dorms. Fred says, okay. He lets her take his car, and this was a brand new car. Fred's car was a brand new car. He lets her, his irresponsible daughter, take her car to a party at the dorms where he knows that they're going to be drinking. And in fact, there were reports made that Fred even took his daughter and her friend to a liquor store to go buy alcohol before this party. So, I don't know. That is a little bit strange to me. And it's like, I don't know. If you're a parent, wouldn't you rather just drop your kid off at the dorms and then have her call you when she's ready to be picked up so that she's being safe? I don't know. Maybe they do it different over there in Massachusetts. But anyways, so she drops her dad off at the hotel that he's planning on staying at, and she goes to this dorm party. And she's drinking, as one does at a dorm party. And she stays there for a while, I think until like 2 or 3 in the morning. Well, she's driving Fred's brand new car back to the hotel because she was going to go drop off the car or stay with him, whatever. And she gets into a car accident on the way home, or on the way to the hotel. And it's a pretty bad accident. The cops were called and it was reported. I guess it was about $10,000 worth of damage to the car. And the cop ended up having the car like towed, whatever, and then the cop drove Maura to the hotel. And by the time she gets to the hotel, obviously it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. Her dad is already asleep, so she just gets into bed and the next morning tells him about the car accident. And the night before too, when the cop picked her up, I guess he never did a sobriety check on her, which is crazy. Like, it's a college town, it's 3 in the morning, and there's a car accident. You'd think that that would be one of the first things that the cop would do, but somehow she got out of doing a sobriety check, and she ended up just getting driven back to the hotel. Well, apparently the next morning, she goes to tell her dad, hey dad, I have something to tell you. Basically, I totaled your brand new car. Some people say that this is reason for something to happen later on, because people say that, Fred was probably visibly upset, got very upset and angry with Maura, and she decided to make some bad decisions that we're going to talk about later. But, of course, Fred said, no, I didn't yell at her. I was upset, but it was whatever. Like, I knew insurance was going to cover it. So, anyways, he has Maura call the insurance, and he wants her to pick up papers on Monday so that they can file a claim. And Maura agrees to that, and they said that they will talk again on Monday. So, I can't remember how Fred gets home, but anyways, he goes home, he leaves Amherst, and he and Maura he drops her back off at the university. And that all happened Saturday and Sunday. Saturday was the party, and Sunday is when Fred dropped Maura back off at school. Well, Monday rolls around, and Maura is supposed to have class, but I guess it got canceled because of a snowstorm. So she looks up directions to the Berkshires or Burlington, an area in Vermont where I guess her family would hike and vacation when she was younger. She gets it off of MapQuest, and there are reports that she packed up her room. Like, art was taken off of the walls, things were packed up, but I can't confirm that because the pictures that I've seen of her room didn't seem like they were that packed up to me, but I don't know. And then she emails her supervisor or professor or whatever and says that there's been a death in the family and she's going to be out of school for the week, which is not true. There was no death in the family. The family confirmed that. And she packs up some stuff and like your basic essentials, toiletries, all of that kind of stuff that you would take with you if you were going to be gone for a little while. She takes it with her in her car. She stops by a liquor store. And this is the thing that's a little strange because she stops by a liquor store and she doesn't just get a 6-pack. She gets kind of a lot of booze. She gets a bottle of Bailey's, a bottle of Kahlua, something else, and then a box of wine, like Franzia wine. It's a lot for one person, but whatever. She also stops by an ATM and she takes out $280, which is her entire bank account, basically. So she takes out the $280. She's got her wine, she's got her essentials, and she is on the road. She's driving, and I think it's the Highway 19, I want to say. I could be wrong on that, so I'm not totally sure. She's driving down Highway 19, and it's cold. It's not snowing, but it's cold, and there's snow on the ground. And she's driving. This highway is like very windy. It's like a mountainous terrain. So it's dark. 7:30 at night, she gets into another car accident. I mean, I don't know what this girl is doing, but apparently she gets into a car accident, and it is so bad that the car won't start. This is where it gets kind of like, what the heck? She gets out of the car. She's trying to fix the car. Apparently her father told her that if the car doesn't run, to put a rag in the tailpipe, and that will keep it from breaking down. So apparently she tries that. It doesn't work. The car is not working, so she gets out of the car. People in the surrounding area hear the car accident, and so there is a man named Butch Atwood. I'll put a picture of him right here. He's a school bus driver. He comes around in his school bus, and he asks Maura if she needs help, and she doesn't want any help from him. I don't know. I kind of, like, you look at Butch, and you kind of think you're in a dark area, an unfamiliar area, it's cold, and this man comes up to you and asks if you need help. I don't know. I'd probably say the same thing. She says, no, I don't need any help. I'm good. Thank you. And he asks her if he wants her to call the police for her. And she says no. Like, definitely doesn't want the police called. And in fact, she says, I already called AAA. Which is a lie, and Butch Atwood knows that because at that time in those mountains, there was zero cell phone service. So it would have been impossible for her to call 911. Well, during that time, and Butch had a wife too. So here's the thing, is that Butch should have realized that that was a little bit creepy, and he should have gone out there with his wife. Now, I know that there are couples, serial killers, and couples do awful things to other people, but it is a little bit less intimidating for a husband and wife to come out and see if you need help than just a strange looking man in a school bus asking you if you need help. I don't know, that's just my opinion. So Butch agrees, like, okay, I won't call 911, she's got it taken care of, whatever, and he goes back inside. But they're kind of like looking out the window during this time and, kind of keeping an eye on her. Well, there was another neighbor too who did call the police and reports that there had been an accident, and she says, I see a woman, there's like some flurry in the trunk, and there's somebody else in the passenger seat smoking a cigarette. Well, she later retracts this statement and says, oh no, it must have been like a cell phone light or a cigarette lighter light, like the ones that they used to have in cars all the time. And she says, I don't know that there were two people there. So she retracts that, which would have, if that were true, that would have changed a lot of things. So they've reported this accident, and basically the police say, okay, somebody will be out there. Well, the police finally show up at 7:46, and Maura is nowhere to be seen. They have zero information about where she went. Even the people who were on the phone with the police said it was literally like she was gone in a second. Like, I saw her and then I turned back around, and she was gone. So they don't know what happened to her between the time of the accident and the police showing up at 7:46. So the accident happened at around 7:27, so it's not very much time for somebody to just like disappear, although we all know that can happen in a second. So the police get there, they check out the car is locked, and they can see inside that she has all of her things still in there. The only things that are missing are her debit card, credit cards, and her cell phone, which those are the things, like, if you're going to go walk to get help, those are probably the things that you're going to take with you. And if you are going to come back to your car, you're probably going to lock the car so that nothing happens to it. But the police, they're able to get inside, and they find that there are red stains on the roof of the car. And it's not blood, though. They think that it was wine. They think that Maura was drinking and driving at the same time. She got in the accident. Once the car hit the embankment, wine flew up on the ceiling of the car, and that's why there was red stains on the ceiling. And so they pretty much know at that point that Maura was probably drinking. And at that point, we kind of know that Maura was probably drinking, which explains why she did not want Butch Atwood to call the police. Obviously, she did not want a DUI. She didn't want to get in trouble. And so I think that she just wanted to get away from the scene so that if the police showed up, she wouldn't be in trouble. But at the same time, we really have no idea what happened to Maura. Like, there's no... think about like what it looks like on when you're going up the mountains in the snow. There's snow everywhere. It's a very wooded area, and there's no footprints in the snow. There's no blood at the scene. There's no indication that there was foul play involved, but there are a plethora of theories about what could have happened to her on that night, because I feel like when you don't have a lot of information, when somebody just disappears, people's minds go wild and they just think of any possible thing that could have happened that could explain or, kind of create some sort of a timeline of what happened that night. So I'm just gonna, because we don't know anything, I'm just gonna go over some of the theories that people have come up with about what happened to her that night. The first theory is that Maura just had so much going on in her life that she just wanted to commit suicide. She was done with it. There were reports that she had struggled with eating disorders. She was possibly going through a difficult time with her boyfriend. She was getting in car accidents. She was partying a lot. She was making a lot of bad decisions. And I think the icing on the cake that a lot of people would think was her hitting the boy that was walking by the campus, although I don't really think that happened. There was a lot of things going on in Maura's life that just would explain a little bit of just like, I'm over it. I am ready to just be done with everything. But in my opinion, I don't think, unless she was really struggling with some other mental health things, I don't think what happened was enough to warrant her committing suicide. So people think that she just walked into the woods and just didn't come out. Like, wanted to just walk into the woods and basically either kill herself out there and die of hypothermia. It doesn't really... I don't know, it doesn't really make sense to me. The only reason why her dying out there makes sense to me is because when you die in the woods, there's a good chance that your body won't be found because it'll be eaten by animals, kind of torn into a bunch of different pieces. I know that's really difficult to hear, but that part is very possible, and so that makes sense to me, but I still don't think that's what happened. I don't think that Maura just went into the snow and got hypothermia or killed herself out in the woods, and that's the end of the story. I don't buy that. So, but that is one option that people think about. Another big theory is that Maura had so much going on in her life that she just wanted to start over. She wanted to start fresh, and this was her way to just basically fake a death and just get away. So some people say that she started a new life in Canada. There were some people saying that they had seen her in Canada, but it has come out that those haven't been like the best, most reliable sources. And so there's no confirmed sightings of her since this happened. There are also people who have questioned Fred Murray, or have at least said that he knows more than he has stated in the press. People have said that accused him of like sexual abuse and all sort of sick things, but he was interviewed in the Oxygen show, and he was asked straight up, "Did you abuse Maura?" And his answer was no, and I felt like his answer was very authentic. I don't really have a lot of suspicions about Fred Murray, but I don't know. That's just my opinion. One theory is that he knows more than what he's saying, and that he's kind of helped Maura find a new life in Canada or wherever, because it was it did come out that he had withdrawn a lot of money the day that she disappeared, or the day before she disappeared, but he's always explained that was because they were going to buy a car that day. So those are some of the theories. Another big theory is that she was abducted. So we know that abductions can happen in a split second, and although it seems unlikely because all of those people were kind of like watching down at the scene of what's happening when she got into her accident, we know that it can happen so quickly. And so to me, in my opinion, this is probably the most plausible theory, is that somebody saw that she was in distress. She had walked away from the car because, again, she didn't want to get caught for a DUI if the cops showed up. A lot of crimes happen out of opportunity. That's a really good opportunity. It's dark, it's cold, it's a young girl by herself. She has no means of transportation because her car has broken down, and it's a really dark wooded area. I think that's like the perfect area for a opportunistic person to take advantage of her. But again, there was no indicator that she was like picked up. Although the dogs that search for scents, they picked up on scents for Maura walking down that highway, and then it just stopped. So to me, that says that she got into a car with somebody. And a lot of people say, well, even though she got into a car with somebody, why would she do that when she just told Butch Atwood that she didn't want his help? Well, maybe this other person didn't look as creepy as Butch Atwood did, or maybe they didn't give Maura a choice. Maybe whoever it was just grabbed her and pulled her into the car. We don't know. But another thing that makes me think that she was abducted and murdered is that there was and if you are familiar with this case, then you have heard about the A-frame house. There's an A-frame house that's very close to where Maura had her car accident. And this is like, I could do a whole video on just the A-frame house, but to give it to you short, there was a man living there, and he was, he had a brother. Now, years later, the brother came out and said that he found a bloody knife in his brother's, what is that called? The drawer in the car where you keep, like, registration and stuff. Anyways, he found a bloody knife in his brother's car, and he gave it to Fred to be submitted to the police for testing. Well, it was later, either it came back that it wasn't Maura's blood or something of that nature. They didn't take it seriously, and to be honest, I'm not sure if it was ever officially tested, but the police kind of just like didn't really like investigate that too seriously, in my opinion. And mostly because the brother, I guess, had a history of drug abuse, and his other family members were saying that he just tried to turn in his brother because he wanted the reward money. But this guy also said that after Maura's disappearance, his brother, the one who had the knife, and the girlfriend acted very strange. And so that's what kind of prompted him to find that knife and turn it into Fred to turn into the authorities. Another thing is that there are cadaver dogs that hit on that A-frame house, like went bonkers apparently. So if you don't know what dogs are, they're dogs that pick up on the scent of decay. So they can actually smell death essentially. And so cadaver dogs are used a lot in cases like this because they want to know if there is even a body, like is this a murder? Is this a disappearance? Well, the cadaver dogs went insane when they got to the A-frame house. And so apparently they tested that carpet, but the results of that carpet were never made public. So in the documentary, if you watch the series on Oxygen, you'll see that they go into that A-frame house, and this guy who was accused by his brother no longer lives there, but they go into the A-frame house, and it had been like bought and sold a couple times, and so there had been remodeling, so the carpet isn't even there anymore. But that the cadaver dogs especially hit on a closet inside this house, and when they went to the closet, they were able to pull back some of the chips and test them for blood, and the blood analysis said that it was actually blood. And so they took that blood sample, that wood chip sample, to a lab to get tested, and it came back that it definitely was human blood. And they said that it was from two different people. One was a man, and they couldn't tell if the other one was a male or a female. But that's really, really suspicious to me, because why would you have blood in a closet? But who knows? So they weren't ever able to tell if that was Maura's blood, just because I guess it was so old and it was such a small amount that that sample just wasn't enough to say if it was Maura's. Now, there is also a author that I told you guys about earlier by the name of James Renner. Now, James Renner is an author who has really researched this Maura Murray case a lot, and his theory is a little bit different than mine. His theory is that Maura wanted to start a new life. So his theory is that, yes, she was picked up by somebody that night, but it was a tandem driver. So he thinks that she went somewhere, or she went up the mountains with a friend, and then once she got into the car accident, the person that she was driving with just picked her up and took her to her new life. I don't really agree with that, but the support that he has for that theory is that at the liquor store, the cashier there said that she saw Maura with two other girls that night, so when she was buying alcohol. So I don't know, it just seems a little bit like there's not enough for me to support that theory, but it is possible, that's for sure. There's also a lot of people who think that this was just a police cover-up because they did such a poor job investigating the case, but I don't really buy that. The theory is that they never made a police report when the accident happened, and so some people think that one of the cops probably gave Maura a ride somewhere and never made a report on it, so that when it came back that she had disappeared, it would have looked really bad on that cop because he would have been one of the last ones to see her. So I don't know. I don't really buy that theory, but that is another theory out there, that it's some sort of huge police conspiracy. And then there's also another theory that it's connected to another murder that happened in that same area. So there was a girl named Brianna Maitland who was also probably murdered in that same area. Similar circumstances, where her car was found backed into this like really old barn looking thing. But it has come out that Brianna was maybe friends with not the best people in town, and so maybe that had something to do with it, but I don't know. I don't know if they're connected or not. Okay, so I'm back with lashes on and brows on because I can't do that and talk at the same time. It's just the truth. So now I'm going to line my lips with a little bit of this Bite Beauty number 18. I just did my lip liner because I didn't know that my microphone wasn't on. I'm going to go ahead and use this Nude Sticks and Whisper. So I highly recommend that you guys watch the Oxygen series. And if you like listening to podcasts, podcasts. The Missing Maura Murray is a really good one to get you down the rabbit hole of this case for sure, because there's just so many little details that lead people to their theories, but we don't really know exactly what happened. So I would like to know what you guys think about this case. What do you think happened to Maura? And it's such a sad case because she had so much potential. She was doing well in nursing school and all of that. So yeah, tell me what your theories are, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.